What it do, Cucks? It's your boy Hater on the road up in this pace, and it's time to start a new video series. This is going to be called WWE Problems. Here we go. Problem number 1. The subject matter of this video: too many fat fucks. All right? A lot of people in this company are fat or out of shape. Now, let's take a moment to define fat. So, if you were to walk down the street and you saw like a Nakamura or a Sami Zayn, I do not think you would think to yourself, look at that fat bastard, right? You wouldn't think they'd be like, oh, it's a regular guy, right? But in the context of WWE, they're both fat. They both got little tummies, you know what I mean? You want to just poke them in their little tummies, yeah? They just kind of look like that, right? So the fact that there's too many fat people is a problem. It's a problem for 2 reasons. Number 1, it clearly shows that the people that they're hiring don't give a fuck about the way that they are presented, right? It doesn't matter if you tell me that this person is a big deal. I have to be able to believe it as well, right? And in addition, it goes to show that there's no diversity in the presentation of characters, right? Everybody's the same because they all look the same. You know what I mean? So for example, you got Jacob Fat Poo, right? This guy's fat. I don't give a flying fuck if they pretend that he's a tough guy. I know that there's fat people that obviously that are tough guys, right? Like I'm sure Eric and Ivar, who are also both fat, like they're tough guys, right? I'm sure Jacob Fatu is a tough guy, but I'm never gonna believe that he's a tougher guy than Goldberg, right? I don't care. Maybe he can beat the shit out of Goldberg. I don't care, right? I'm never gonna believe it. I'm never gonna buy into it, right? Which is why when Goldberg comes out, everyone shuts the fuck up, because Michael Cole and Wade Barrett and Pat McAfee don't have to convince you that Goldberg is awesome, right? They don't have to convince you that Bobby Lashley can kick your ass, right? You look at Bobby Lashley and you're like, all right, this guy's gonna kick my ass if you wanted to, right? Lesnar, Orton, Cena, Kane, right? The Undertaker, player. We haven't said that one in a while. A lot of these guys can clearly kick ass. You can just look at them and you're like, these guys are serious business, right? Even the people that were a little bit fat, right? Like Albert and fucking JBL, you know? These guys that weren't like, you know, chiseled out of stone, at least for the majority of their careers, right? Even these people, they look like they can kick your ass because they're enormous. You know, they're big otherwise, right? Then everybody else who is not gifted with size, right, falls into 2 categories. The Mark Henry category or the everybody else category. The everybody else category, everyone in that category looks like a fucking bodybuilder. You know what I mean? You got like, you look at someone like Steve Blackman or Ken Shamrock, right? And you're like, these guys are like in insane shape. Like there's no doubt, like nobody serious would ever think that Sami Zayn can beat up Ken Shamrock. Even if you didn't know that Ken Shamrock is an MMA legend, right? Like you would automatically think like, oh, okay, Ken Shamrock would like you know, 25 hit combo this jobber into oblivion, right? Like nobody would believe that Grayson Waller can beat up Steve Blackman, right? Grayson Waller's in decent shape, but he's not in exemplary shape, right? There's a few that are in exemplary shape right now in WWE, like Tommaso Ciampa, but he's also like 115 pounds. So the idea isn't just that there's too many fat people, but I think that's the best way to capture it, because I personally believe that's the biggest problem nowadays, right? For example, in the past, right, historically, Mark Henry has always been overweight, right? And Mark Henry is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, but I will admit that Mark Henry is one of those people, right, where they have to tell you why he's good, right? Because he's obviously a big guy, right? But by looking at Mark Henry, you wouldn't think that Mark Henry is like stronger than, I don't know, Kane or Lashley, right? You wouldn't think that just by looking at him, right? Like, if you look at Mark Henry and you look at Bronson Reed, someone has to explain to you that Mark Henry is like 100 times stronger than him, right? Because if you had to guess, you might pick Bronson Reed, right? They have a similar build. But Mark Henry, like, what they have to tell you about him, being the world's strongest man, is premised on a fact, right? It's not disputable that Mark Henry is stronger than, like, basically everybody else in WWE history, right? Maybe, like, you know, second to, like, the big shows of the world. Not second, but equal to, like, the Kanes and Big Shows, people that are just, like, enormous, right? Even those guys have all said that Mark Henry is, like, significantly stronger than all of them, right? So, like, you know, with all that being said, I think that, like, you know, that category operates on a different level. Nowadays, we don't have the world's strongest man. We don't have anything. right? Now we have a bunch of fat people that we have to be told are like good at what they do, right? Bronson Reed is a great example. He looks like a tough guy, I will admit, right? So like, you don't have to sell it too much, right? But you know, he does the tsunami, which is like technically a top rope move, right? And you're like, oh, this guy can also like, do high flying moves. He just falls off the top rope. But nevertheless, right? The point is, they have to explain to you, right, that Bronson Reed is like a real deal, right? Because someone like Bronson Reed, like, in my personal opinion, again, I'm basing it on appearances only. Like, and that's another thing that I want to like reiterate. You know, I'm basing it on what I see, right? I don't know. Maybe Bronson Reed is like a 10th degree like black belt, you know, in Taekwondo for all the fuck I know, right? I don't know. I don't give a shit because that's not what this is. But like, if you show me like Bronson Reed and you next to him you put like, I don't know, Farouk, right? Or even worse, Kane, right? Like, I'm never gonna believe that Bronson Reed can beat up Farouk or Kane, obviously in their primes. Like, now he'd probably beat them up, but you know, in their primes. Like, you're never gonna like convince me that he can, right? You're never gonna convince me that Bronson Reed can beat up Brock Lesnar, right? Even if I didn't know that Brock Lesnar was legit, you would never be able to convince me of this. See what I'm saying? Right? Then we go one step further, Jacob Fatu and JC Fateo. JC Fateo and like in Jacob Fatu, these guys, like, they're just like regular dudes. You know what I mean? Like, they look like regular dudes. JC Fateo, he's a little bit fat, but he looks the part. You know what I mean? A lot of these guys look the part, right? Like, you know, fucking Eric and Ivar look the part. They look like tough guys, but they're also fat, right? So it's like, it's hard to believe, like, you know, if you compare them to like Goldberg in his prime, that they could beat up Goldberg, right? Like, they're not stronger than Goldberg. They might be strong, but they're not stronger than Goldberg, almost certainly. Now, is it possible? Yeah. Some people, like Mark Henry, for example, you wouldn't think by looking at him and looking at Brock Lesnar that Mark Henry's stronger than Brock Lesnar, but he is, right? Some people are deceiving to the eye, but generally speaking, you know, there's a reason why we correlate certain appearances with certain behaviors, right? So the point is, there is no room, in my opinion, in modern day wrestling for someone like Jacob Fatu to be presented as like a main eventer, right? He does not look like a main eventer. He looks like a mid-carder. And that's what he is, and good for him, you know, nothing against that, right? Like, same thing with Umaga, right? Like, this is one of the things that pissed me off the most, right? It's like, you have Umaga, and he's a big guy. He's like way bigger than Jacob Fatu. I think he was like 6'5". He was like a big dude, you know? Like, all things considered. But then you look at him, he's got man tits and a fucking bulging stomach. Like, Umaga's never been to the gym once in his life, right? There is no universe where I'm ever gonna believe that Umaga, I don't care if he really is a Samoan savage. I don't even care if he's a cannibal and like, you know, eats dead bodies. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm not gonna ever believe that Umaga is gonna beat up Randy Orton. I'm never believing it, motherfucks. Maybe he can. Oh, Umaga grew up in the tough streets. It's like, these people have been millionaires for like generations, but somehow they're always growing up tough, you know? Like, all the Samoan wrestlers, I mean. You know, I'm not gonna believe it, motherfucker. Like, there's no way I'm gonna believe that these guys can beat up like, you know, Randy Orton or Cena or Lesnar. Like, Lesnar, that's, like, for sure they're not beating up Lesnar or Lashley, right? But I'm never gonna believe it. You know, you like, I remember one of the biggest feuds of the time was like, you know, during the Vince McMahon Donald Trump feud. That should have been the main event, right? That was like the thing that was presented as the main attraction of that WrestleMania. And the match was Lashley versus Umaga, right? And I'm like, this is fucking retarded. I'm like, this is just, it's like laughable, right? Like, Lashley's bigger than Umaga, and then like he punches Umaga in the head and Umaga like no sells it. It's like, if Lashley punched this guy in the head for real, he'd be knocked out immediately, right? But, and I understand, like, there is some reasonable, you know, variance, right? So, like, okay, like, if the truth is, if Lashley punched, like, anybody in the head, they're probably gonna get knocked out, right? So, but like, if you're Kane, or if you're, like, even, like, Test, if you're someone, like, the size of Test, and you get punched in the head by Lashley, all right, maybe you can no-sell it, because look at fucking Test. Test is just, like, a freak of nature himself, right? But Umaga is just, like, a regular fat guy. And he's, like, they're pretending that he's, like, viable next to Lashley, right? It's like, there's no chance that Umaga would beat up Lashley. Again, this is not knowing Lashley's background even. Just by looking at them, you're like, there's absolutely no chance, right? It was, in my opinion, a significant plot hole in the way that the feud was presented, right? Because Donald Trump picks Lashley as his representative, an up-and-comer, right, who just looks like he does. And then Mr. McMahon, who could literally pick anybody because it's his company, he picks Umaga, right? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Umaga is like the least believable big guy of all time. Like, it's like, you look at Umaga and you look at like any big guy. Like, if you look at Umaga and you look at like Gene Snitsky, right? you're like, if Gene Snitsky wanted to, he would tear this guy apart in 3 seconds, right? Like, it's not believable at all. It's one thing if you're like shorter than the monsters and fat, right? Like Mark Henry was shorter. He's shorter than Kane, right? But like, he looks like an animal. He's just big, you know? Even if you didn't know he was the world's strongest man, you know, and someone explained it to you, that would take him to the next level. But he's just like enormous, right? He's so broad, he's wide. You can tell that this guy's got like size. Like Umaga is this like relatively narrow-shouldered, short-armed, like no bicep, no tricep, not one muscle in his body. He's just a fat guy, you know? And they're like, wow, this guy's a monster. And I'm like, no, he's not, motherfucks. No, he's not. There's like mid-carders that were presented as being under Umaga that would give him like easily a challenge in a real fight, right? Like Val Venus. Like, I would take Val Venus in a fight over Umaga. They're like, Val Venus is like definitely stronger, you know? Oh, Umaga has face paint, does he? Well, kiss my ass. What do you think of them apples, right? And now, the next logical evolution of Umaga is going to be people like Jacob Fatu, right? And you have like Rikishi. Like, it's like, I think S.A. Rios can beat up Rikishi, right? Rikishi's like I said before, he's this guy, he's got these short T-Rex arms, right? He's short T-Rex arms. He's got a fat ass. Like, his ass is like 50% of him, you know? And I'm like, and they're trying to tell me this guy's like a tough guy. Are you fucking kidding me? It's like you have like Rikishi, he's like squashing Steve Blackman. Like, Steve Blackman would beat the shit out of this guy in 3 seconds. You know what I mean? And I get it. Again, not even knowing what he looks like. Like Al Snow, like I would take Al Snow in a fight over Rikishi. Rikishi's just like a fat guy who doesn't work out. There's no room for this, motherfuckers. We need to have some sort of standards. Now, to Fatu's credit, Jacob Fatu, I mean, to his credit, he does look like someone that can beat you up, and he does look like someone that mildly works out, right? Quite frankly, all the impressive moves that I heard that he was gonna do, I haven't seen one yet. The only thing he does is he does a moonsault. He's like 250 pounds maybe, does a moonsault. Ooh, you know what I mean? Kurt Angle did a moonsault, right? Did it 100 times better, you know what I mean? And he could do other things too. Like, until I see Jacob Fatu actually lift somebody, you know what I mean? Because all his moves are these like low effort moves, right? He has like the Impaler DDT, where he just grabs the guy in DDT, then the other guy jumps up, and then he drops on his back. It's not impressive, you know? The pop-up Samoan drop, which everyone does, it's all on the other guy, right? Try doing that to like Jacob Fatu, right? Well, actually, you probably could sell it pretty well, but you know what I mean, right? Like, that's not a move where you're lifting somebody up, right? It's easier to do that than it is to do the Samoan drop, where you actually have to lift somebody. And I want to see him lift up a big guy, right? And actually hold him up, right? Not like he did. He had like LA Knight and some other guy for like 2 seconds, and the other guy drops off. No, you know, show me some feats of strength to convince me, right? Until then, I'm going to have to lean on my boy. I think it was Xavier Woods. It may have been Kofi, right? Who said, it's impressive because he's fat, right? And honestly, that phrase doesn't get the respect it deserves. Because the implications, I mean, I think they're pretty clear. But the idea is like, nothing fucking impressive is happening here, right? It's only because he's fat that he becomes impressive, right? Like Kofi said, I could do that move, right? If Kofi does it, it's not impressive. And that's what Michael Cole said. Like, Kofi's like, I can do that springboard, like, you know, handspring thing, right? And then Michael Cole's like, Kofi, you're not like 320 pounds, right? So there you go. The move is not inherently impressive. It's only being considered impressive because a fat guy's doing it. Well, how about instead get people that look impressive, so then the bar for impressive moves goes up, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. But, and I'm not saying get rid of all the fat guys, but it's like there's too many fat guys, right? Just like one fat guy after another. Like, you watch the Royal Rumble, it's a bunch of fat people, man. You know, like it's like this is unacceptable, you know? And it's like everyone that's like prospective is fat. Right? They're like, oh, look at Tony D'Angelo. He's kind of fat. Right? Look at Obafemi. He is fat. He's fat, motherfucks. Like, he's fat. They bring like Samoa Joe. They're like, oh, this guy's like a threat. He's a fat ass, man. Like, it's like, I'm not believing in any scenario that Obafemi or Samoa Joe stand any chance against like Scott Steiner in his prime. Like, he would murder them both in seconds. And this is, again, I'm basing it only on appearance, let alone the fact that Scott Steiner is an accomplished amateur wrestler who would fold these guys up in 10 seconds, like, even now probably. But, like, you know what I mean? You have to look the part, right? I understand, you know? I get it, believe me. You know? I don't think in my life I've seen anybody that looks like Lashley or Brock Lesnar, except for Lashley and Brock Lesnar when I've seen them live, right? These people are rare as shit, right? That's why they're big deals, right? It's like or for example, on the women's side, right? People like Jade Cargill, you don't just go to the mall and you see people like Jade Cargill, right? So when you do, you're like, holy shit, this person's a star, right? Same thing, right? With Lashley, with Lesnar, with Orton, and even Cena, right? Like if you see Randy Orton, like just imagine yourself being in a cafe and then Randy Orton walks in or someone like him. You'd be like, holy shit, look at this motherfucker. He's like 6'5", 280 pounds, like all muscle, you know what I mean? You're like, man, that's a big motherfucker, you know what I mean? You're like, that's an alpha human being. If you're hanging out at Starbucks and Jacob Fatu comes in, you're like, oh, let me see if I have any change to give to this balding homeless guy. Because that's what he looks like. He looks like a regular dude, you know? And then if JC Fateo comes in, you're like, oh, that's unfortunate. What's wrong with this guy? You know, like, this is what you would think, motherfucks. You would never think if Jacob Fatu walks into like a Starbucks, like, honestly, like, I swear to God, honestly, if he didn't act like a retard, right? Because, of course, if he starts convulsing and, like, screaming, yeah, he might be intimidating. But if he's like a normal dude, like a normal dude like Kevin Owens or Jacob Fatu just appears, like, are you going to be intimidated at all? Are you going to feel like, wow, I better be careful around this guy because he might hurt me, right? No, you're going to be like, I don't give a fuck, he's a regular dude just like me. But if you see, like, Goldberg in his prime, right, you're like, oh, shit, this guy can probably murder me if he wants to, right? That's what we need more of, not fat fucks. So, get rid of these people, put them in the mid-card, have them lose weight, and I will finish by saying this. At the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, I mean, Gunther's gaining some weight back, but I can't be angry at him, you know? At the end of the day, he understood, right? He understood that this is not a fat man's business, right? And if he wants to achieve, he needs to go and lose some weight. That's what he did. So kudos to him for that, but he still sucks. So with that being said, take care of yourselves. Cucksties.